Hey everybody, Stu Smith here, going live, and this is another weekend Never Quit Mindset, or the Never Quit Mindset Weekend. It's kind of new. It's our third one we've done, and over the course of the weekend sometime, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. This just so happens to be a 3-day weekend, so Sunday night seemed like the best night to do this one. And it is the Never Quit Mindset with Viktor Frankl. Obviously, we don't have Viktor Frankl with us today, but we're going to discuss some of what he has done. The Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it, but also look into some of the theories of psychiatry that he is neurology that he has had over his lifetime. And you may actually see probably what, from what I perceive, is the science of never quit. You got to bear with me here on this one because it is my understanding of what he is saying. But if you haven't heard of the term logotherapy, LOGO therapy, check it out because we're going to discuss this a little bit. But it is, from what I perceive, is the science of or theory of never quitting. And this book right here discusses it, but it also discusses his life as a prisoner of war or concentration camp as an Austrian Jew who, during World War II, suffered and survived. And this is what he learned from it. But he was a psychiatrist, neurologist long before World War II. Actually, was somewhat out of a, I don't want to say student of Freud. He actually knew Freud, actually knew Adler, had some similarities there, and you can see some of their works together, maybe published articles together. But very interesting history. So he came into this World War II concentration camp as a neurologist and psychotherapist. So that probably helped him a little more than the average person because he had been working on man's search for meaning for years and created logotherapy after it. And so this has a lot to do with observing human behavior at its best and at its worst. Um, that was just shocking, uh, to say the least. Um, Especially the bitterness of confinement, and then the transition out of that confinement life, and you have to rebuild your entire life. But he had meaning, and that was what he really taught. And there's a couple passages in here I want to read to you before we go into the questions. But I'd highly recommend checking this one out. We discuss a little bit of it in the never quit mindset, but nothing quite like this. I mean, I can't even compare my life, obviously, to his. Uh, and anybody who suffered in a concentration camp and survived, their level of never quit is above and beyond, not even comparable. So if they can do the amazing, imagine what you can do with a goal just set up in your life that might require a year of hard work, and you have all the ability to do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about it first. What logotherapy is. Logotherapy is the will to have meaning. So Frankl developed this therapy, and it's basically just a therapeutic approach based on the belief that there is a fundamental drive in all of us to search for meaning. And what does that mean? He breaks down what means something to humans in three pathways. One is by your work or doing good deeds, engaging in purposeful activity that contributes to something larger than oneself. You can take that and run with it many different ways, from community service, um, being a good parent, military service, things that contribute to the greater good and larger than yourself. Uh, that is meaningful, right? By experiencing something or encountering someone, through love for another person or finding meaning in relationships, that is another definition of man's search for meaning in our social lives. And then finally, probably the biggest, what I think is the most important part of this, is pure attitude. How, what is your attitude when there is unavoidable suffering, right? Do you have a smile on your face? Can you think of something else during painful, boring, monotonous events? Finding meaning by choosing our own attitude in the face of unavoidable pain and suffering is is a skill that needs to be developed. You have a good attitude. Sometimes, like, I'll wake up in the morning and be all butthurt that I got to wake up because I'm pretty comfortable in the morning. Don't feel like getting up. I mean, just by after reading this, you could say, well, I don't have it bad at all. I actually have a full belly. I'm not starving. You know, all I have to do is get up and put on running shoes. Right. So when you start comparing this life to your own, you will say, I don't have any problems. In fact, one of the things I like that he mentioned in the book, as well as some of the things I'm studying here, is he coined the term tragic optimism. And there's a reason why I like this, because long before I've heard of Viktor Frankl, I have always used the term apathetic optimist. And I've said it dozens of times in my speaking and how I handle disappointment. But tragic optimism is the ability to remain hopeful and find meaning despite unavoidable tragedies, failures, and sufferings. I just happen to call this the apathetic optimist. What does that mean? I hope for the best. I work hard for the best outcome. But if it doesn't happen, I'm like, eh, let's figure out another way to do it. So, apathetic optimist. There's a reason why I like Viktor Frankl stuff. And once again, I am not trying to compare my life to his in any way, but I've just found that if there's something about the never quit mindset that you're trying to go a little deeper on, I promise you this book can get to it. So I have a few passages I want to read, and then we can take some questions. And I don't care if the questions are about logotherapy, your search for meaning. I mean, I would love to hear them if you have them. Your story of suffering and you coming out on top. Those are type of things I would prefer to hear. But if you have other questions, that's fine too. Um, but let me share some of these with you. And I have to turn on my light here to look at this. So, not only in creativeness, enjoyment are meaningful. If there is meaning in life at all, then there must be meaning in suffering. Suffering is part of life, even as fate and death. Without suffering and death, human life cannot be complete. Now, he gets pretty deep. That's pretty deep there. Um, but I enjoy reading that and understanding that, it's life. Congratulations. We're human. You have doubts about yourself, you fear failing. That's natural. It is part of suffering and finding the inner strength, you know, to change your fate. Here's another one I liked. Let me find my fingers here. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. That's a Nietzsche's quote that he shared inside the concentration camp many times. In fact, there's a really interesting story about him having what he said to his fellow prisoners um, in a time when they were starving. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the task which is it is constantly set for an individual. Hmm, that's really what you're right. It is. It's up to you. A man who becomes conscious of the responsibility he bears towards a human being who affectionately waits for him or to an unfinished work will never be able to throw away his life. He knows the why for his existence and will be able to bear almost anyhow. All right. So here's what I wanted to share with you. A little story towards halfway through the book. Um, it was a bad day. Um, they found out one of the prisoners stole something. I think they stole some food um, and blankets, right? um, and these were crimes within the prison. And a few days, you know, a semi-starved prisoner had broken into the potato store to steal a few pounds of potatoes. Theft had been discovered, and some prisoners had recognized the burglar. When the camp authorities heard about it, they ordered the guilty man to be given up to them, or the whole camp would starve for a day. Naturally, 2,500 men preferred to fast. Okay. On the evening of this day of fasting, we lay in our earthen huts in a very low mood. Very little was said, and every word sounded irritable. He paints a really interesting picture here. Then, to make matters worse, the lights went out, tempers reached their lowest ebb. But our senior block warden was a wise man. He improvised a little talk about all that was on our minds at that moment. He talked about the many comrades who had died in the last few days, either of sickness or of suicide. But he also mentioned that what may have been the real reason for their deaths, giving up hope. He maintained that there should be some way of preventing possible future victims from reaching this extreme state. And it was to me that the warden pointed to give this advice. God knows I was not in the mood to give psychological explanations or preach any sermons to offer my comrades a kind of medical care for their souls. I was cold and hungry, irritable and tired, but I had to make the effort and use this unique opportunity. Encouragement was now more necessary than ever. So I began to mention the most trivial of comforts first. I said that even in this Europe, in the sixth winter of Second World War, our situation was not the most terrible we could think of. I said that each of us had to ask himself what irreplaceable losses had he suffered up until this moment. I speculated that for most of them, these losses had really been few. Whoever was still alive had reason for hope. Health, family, happiness, professional abilities, fortune, position in society, all these things could be achieved again or restored. After all, we still had our bones intact. Whatever we had gone through could still be an asset to us in the future. And I quoted Nietzsche again: that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Then I spoke to them about the future, and it was to this impartial the future must seem hopeless. And I said that to the impartial, the future must seem hopeless. I agreed each of us could guess for himself how small were his chances of survival. I told him there was no typhus epidemic in the camp. I estimated my chances are about 1 in 20, but I also told them that in spite of this, I had no intention of losing hope or giving up, for no man knew what the future would bring, much less the next hour. Even if we could not expect any sensational sensational military events in the next few days, who knew better than we, with our experiences of camps, how great chances sometimes opened up quite suddenly, at least for the individual. For instance, one might be attached unexpectedly to a special group with exceptionally good working conditions, for this was the kind of thing which constituted the luck of the prisoner. So I won't go on much more on that, but check it out. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, that's a book, good read to check out for sure. So find meaning. That is probably the most important part of his teachings, um, and hope and a little bit of optimism. I know it's hard sometimes, but we can do it if we just keep pushing it and being stubborn about it. All right. So anyway, that's the never quit mindset. Spend a few minutes talking about Viktor Frankl. I would highly recommend reading that. Read this. I quote him a few times in here, along with some of the Stoics. In fact, I may do Marcus Aurelius next, as he is probably king of the Stoic philosophies. Um, Got to read his book as well. So anyway, quit feeling sorry for yourself and get moving. You think you want to do something? Let's figure it out. Figure out how to do it, and don't stop. Be relentless. All right. So I'm done. I'll take a few questions. Let me see if there's any relatable questions. My old football coach used to say there's only two things you can control: your attitude and effort. I love that. That's exactly right. 100%. Sebastian says, what are the mental steps you take when faced with fear and or anxiety? Um, Good questions. I go back to, instead of dealing with it um, psychologically, I tend to focus more on the physiology, if that makes sense. So just by breathing and focusing on relaxing, big inhales, big exhales, you can control some of those stress hormones that are being created when you fear or have anxiety of the future. A lot of times, fear is of future events, anxiety is that actual fear of the future activity that is occurring. Um, so try to get yourself into the present. Like right now, what is going on? Right now, it's nice and quiet. I thought I'd do a podcast. Things are good, right? But a little earlier, things were a little bit crazier around the house, and I didn't have that ability to do this. Um, right now, where are you? Focus on your breathing. There is parasympathetic breathing. Do some box breathing. That is how I tend to focus on it, and then carry one of these things around with you. And all it is, this is just a blank slate of paper, and it is writing things down that are bothering me. But not just bothering me, great ideas that I think of that I want to get started on now, but I know I should probably wait till Monday morning to get to work and really focus on them. They're part of my to do list. So a lot of times, anxiety of your future activities, your future to-do lists can start irritating you now. And you got to write it down. This is what I'm going to do. Set a time for it. I'm going to start on this 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and kind of set it aside and let it kind of relax you back into the present. Some people say, rub something on your fingers, poke yourself with something like has a little pin on it or something that just kind of brings you back to the future. Something cold, something hot, something coarse, kind of brings you back into the future, and you start thinking about what's happening now. Why, with me grabbing a hold of this, don't light it because that's going to hurt you. So, hope that helps you. But I do talk about fear and anxiety and stress to do with the never quit mindset. In the never quit mindset, in fact, there's 10 chapters. I'll read the chapter titles for you, and they're not huge. I mean, this is like 100 pages. But each chapter has a almost like its own little to-do list. Like if you're having some doubts, do this. So never quit mindset. It's the action plan. So gives you a plan to create a never quit mindset. Little things to do every day. How the brain body work together, suffer or survive or die. Living a hard life, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, finding fuel when the tank is empty. Failing is a learning experience. Fear of failing is very common, but instead of saying you fail, call it a learning experience, and that takes the fear out of it significantly. Setting lofty goals. You got to set a goal. You got to have meaning, as Viktor Frankl would say. How do you know when you're ready? Focus on weaknesses, maintain strengths, build confidence. Stress mitigation, nutrition, breathing, relaxing, sleep. Talks a lot about dealing with anxiety and stress. Managing doubt. Don't listen to yourself. Talk to yourself. Build habits through consistency and discipline. That's the never quit mindset. Highly recommend it. In fact, let me set it right there. All right. So let's see what else we got. So what book was that? This is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Go check it out. He's written several other books. I mean, he is a psychiatrist. This is my book here, The Never Quit Mindset. You can find it on Amazon or Stu Smith Fitness. All right. So there's a few questions that are unrelated to this. I'll go into those once I get all the related questions first. What is the most stressful situation you have been in during service, and how did you handle it? I mean, anytime you're in charge of things that are supposed to happen, it is stressful. I can't really share a most stressful situation, but I mean, there's varying levels of stress. Some stress is just unfortunate because people did something stupid uh, outside of work, and now you have to clean it up and deal with it. That's a stressful situation that adds the stress to whatever things that are going on, whether it is guys getting in trouble, international incidents, drunken, disorderly, in jail, got to pull them out of a foreign jail. That's never fun. It's stressful and a pain in the ass, be quite frank. But it comes with the job. It just happens. Sometimes when a warrior has no war, they get somewhat irresponsible and a little careless. But when you're juggling a whole lot of events going on, like let's say you're trying to lock out 30 people from a special unit out of a submarine and you're doing things that have never been done before to fit that many people in. It's more of a test. It is a theory that you think will work and you go for it and you test it out and it works, but you're on pins and needles that entire time, which sometimes can be hours or a day to get them back in, after they've successfully launched, done their thing, and then successfully bring them back in. I'm trying to be very not too descript. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a stressful thing when you try to do something just to see if you can, and you're pushing boundaries that if anything goes wrong, that's your ass or someone else that is in there could die. That's pretty stressful, and that's not even a combat situation, right? That's just a regular work situation. Let's see. Uh, all right. So it looks like I've answered all the questions about the topic, Never Quit Mindset and Viktor Frankl. So we'll take some off topic questions for a little bit. I got about another 20 minutes. And let's see. What do we have? Mr. Singh says, irrelevant question, or maybe it's a unrelated question. What are some good scuba shoes that you suggest? The ones I tried were not true to size. My advice is if you can, go to a scuba shop and go get some scuba booties, test them on. If you have that ability to have a scuba shop in your town, I would take advantage of it and go check it out. Most of the time, they're true to size. But if you Google the term scuba booties, there are countless types. I prefer the zip up on the side type. Aqualung has some good ones. Echo Zip boots. If you go to scuba.com, you'll find them, and they'll tell you that they're what the sizes are. I like them because they got a little grip on the bottom, so you can walk around and not have your foot get hurt. You can even run on them if you wanted to on the beach. All right, let's see what else we have. We got some other unrelated questions to the topic. While going through SEAL pipeline, what separates a great candidate from a good candidate? Well, you know what? I'm going to answer this question and try to relate it back to what Viktor Frankl was teaching. Viktor Frankl was teaching you can't just merely survive, right? You have to kind of go above survival, right? So if you're just trying to survive, it's not enough, in his opinion, about making it through a concentration camp, right? And those horrible experiences. You can't just be focused on survival. You got to be focused on having a meaning, having a why. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to serve in this capacity? And you have to strive for not just survival and those minimum standards, right? You need to be looking at way above the minimum standards. So, in fact, I have a saying that I didn't really think about it until now. One of my sayings is don't, you know, train to compete, not just survive. So, really, Viktor Frankl's saying the same thing. You are needing to think higher than just survival. You need to have hope. You need to have a meaning of why you want to keep living through this suffering and get through it. You really have to have the same thing to become a great candidate. Now, that's just through, I would say, first phase, right? You got to have that mentality of exceeding the standard is the standard. Okay. Don't just rely on survival. I saw a lot of people just trying to survive and they failed to meet the standard, or they quit, or something outside the standard distracted them, like being cold or being yelled at or having a long day and not going to sleep on time. All these little things that can distract you from the standard. You need to focus on exceeding that standard. Stay focused on the standard. But beyond that, a great candidate is really someone who can learn new skills quickly and repeat them above and beyond the standard. So, for instance, when you're doing diving, you might be the first time you ever scuba dive. That's okay. You can still get through it. I personally was scuba diving a decade before I was at Buds, and I thought that kind of helped me understand the process of breathing water, breathing air underwater a little better. I wasn't um, opposed to it. I wasn't fearful of it. I understood it. It just seemed like second nature. Um, so learning some new skills, that are tactical and repeating them to meet the standard is something that is very challenging, that a lot of people either have to work really hard to do, or if you're just great at learning new skills and repeating them immediately, that's a great candidate. But everybody has to work on those things. Have you ever considered doing running, pull-up, push-ups, and other critiques? Sure. I do it all the time. Most people send me things that have to do with swimming. But I have done countless running, pull-up, push-up critiques. I just don't publish them. But yeah, I do that quite often. People DM me videos of them doing all kinds of stuff. Let's see, answer that question. Any tips on rehabbing golfer's elbow? Nope, not really. I would go to YouTube, search physical therapy, golfer's elbow, and see what some physical therapist has for helping you get through that. There are some exercises you can do, as well as some bands you can put on your forearm that may help you with your golfer's elbow. But as far as rehab strategies, I don't have them. What I would do if I had golfer's elbow, and I had golfer's elbow, tennis elbow a while back, and I went to YouTube, found myself a physical therapist that was showing how to, work it and massage it and move it, and sure enough, it worked. Let's see. Good evening, Coach. I bought your IFT book. Um, should I be adding your program on-tall to my regular lift schedule or using it as a supplement? Dude, I wouldn't do that. If you're going to focus on crushing the IFT and the OFT, just do the program. There's plenty in here for you to do in a day. Do the whole program, and if you want to lift after, not after that workout, in a different cycle. I mean, there's some lifting in this, but do the whole program as written. I mean, that's what it's there for. You adding in lifting will probably put you in an overtraining zone to where you're not getting stronger with your lifts and you're not getting faster or better with your cardio or calisthenics. So yeah, this is not meant to be a supplement to your bodybuilding plan or whatever you got. Is being USNA SEAL screener ready the same as being SOAS ready? It's close. I would say it is very close to that. because all the events that you do at SOAS are pretty much hammered in the screener and more. It's kind of like your little mini Hell Week, over that weekend. Um, so I would say it's very similar to it. I think the screener is probably harder than SOAS, though some people came back and said there were a few events that the SOAS was harder. Log PT was harder, and hot laps were harder. I mean, running with a log or sandbag on your chest. Let's see here. What else we got? Um, all right. Have you ever been challenged by the younger generation, like in buds or maybe during service? I'm not sure what you're asking. Have you ever been challenged by the younger generation, like in buds or maybe during service? I don't understand your question. I mean, let me tell you this about the younger generation. Here's what I know about the younger generation. I train young men and women who are preparing to serve 6 days a week, and they are volunteering to serve, even though they could go do anything they wanted to go do, but they are choosing to serve. And for the last 20 years, when they knew they were going to a war zone, they still chose to serve. So I don't have any issues with this younger generation. I mean, I'm not that older generation guy making fun of the younger generation because I think that is just something that always happens. The younger generation is different than we are. I'm not saying that is better or worse. They're just different. It was funny because, my generation, when we were going through buds in the late 80s, early 90s, um, Vietnam vets were running buds. They were about to retire, probably been in 30 years or so, late 20s, early 30 years, and Vietnam vets, warrant officers, and master chiefs. Um, all the officers, the captains and admirals were Vietnam vets, and they were revered by all of us. And nearly every one of them called us the MTV generation. And those of you who are the younger generation don't understand what that means. The MTV generation meant you just sat in front of a TV and watch music videos all day. We did. They were pretty darn cool, but we didn't watch them all day. I mean, I still worked, I played sports. Yeah, I watched some music videos that were pretty cool. I played video games in an arcade. So I think every older generation sees the younger generation as wasting time or too idle. And it can be true. There could be people that abuse that, uh, you know, leisure time for sure. But the younger generation that I see works hard, plays hard, and be honest with you, they are the same people, just different faces of the, and we have the same conversations I had 35 years ago when I was in my teens and 20s. So they give me hope. Younger generation gives me hope. I will tell you that right now. Hey Stu, I'm currently searching for my own meaning. Ah, bravo. I think we all should be throughout life. Every decade should have new meaning because it evolves if you're growing. Next week, I am faced with the NRTC service contract and I'm feeling extremely uncertain out of nowhere. How do I know if the Navy is for me? Man, that's a tough one. Um, I will tell you this: if you have spent years thinking about serving in the military to the point where it keeps you up at night and excited about it, nervous about it, anxious about it, working hard to meet those standards to even get accepted into it, I think you'll kick yourself in your ass if you don't do it. Now, do you go do something else and enlist? That's a whole different story because you are serving regardless what direction you go. That's a bigger story and a bigger question. Um, I had that problem. I had to choose between Navy and Army. I mean, those are the two schools I was even considering. I didn't consider any other school, Naval Academy and Army. I just happened to have to get started on the application process earlier than regular college, so I hadn't gotten around to civilian applications. I probably would have once I didn't get accepted into these, but I got lucky and found out I was accepted December my senior year to go to the Naval Academy, though, I was still debating, do I wait around for Army? Um, my whole family wanted me to go Army. I wanted to go Navy. So I went Navy and never regretted it. And be honest with you, you know what I did? I looked at where I would be living after I graduated. And I liked the thought of being in beach towns. And pretty much every Navy base is a beach town. You can pretty much rest assured you're going to have a beach if there's a Navy base. So that is largely why I picked Navy. Simple as that. I didn't know I wanted to be a SEAL at the time. At the time, I wanted to be a pilot. So things change, and just know, things may change. A couple of years in, things may change. May change your mind altogether. That's okay too. What have you learned about what makes a good leader? Good question. Some of the best leaders I have enjoyed have just been good listeners. They were great examples, not only in their professional life, taking opinions of others. And once they did that and made a decision, you knew that decision, even though you may have disagreed with it, you knew it was a good decision. And he thought about things that you didn't think about. And then if you were right, that good leader would say, I should have listened to you. That, have some humility as well. And be able to make a course change if they see an opportunity or a necessity to make a course change and not be so stubborn. This was my decision. We're going to do it. But then again, be flexible enough to make a course correction if needed. That's things I've heard. And just, good examples of being a good human as well. They were good family people, had wonderful family lives. Not all of them did, but the ones I really respected did. Just curious, what's a never quit related story of non-military folks you coach that stand out for you? People that got in shape despite the odds. Good question. I can't tell you how many people. In fact, most of my online coaching that I do, um, in the online coaching programs at Stu Smith Fitness, um, are for people my age or older, even. Some are younger, but some are still competing in their 70s as triathletes or just, endurance runners or, um, just beat cancer, and is trying to get healthy again. That's a never quit story right there if I've ever heard of one, especially those that keep getting after it and, go through health issues. I helped a guy who was almost 400 pounds get to 200 pounds. That was a never quit story. Multiple guys at 300 drop 100 pounds to get to 200. 350 down to 220, competing in, world-class competitions. So I would say those are the ones. And it wasn't overnight. It was one of those long-term goals with setbacks and failures and injuries that we had to work around and figure out and get on a path of consistency. And next thing you know, they're more disciplined than I am. Right? They just took it and just ran with it and just love the whole discipline change in their lives and how it's affecting not only just this one little 30 or 45-minute exercise in the morning affects the rest of their day to a point where they're more confident in their abilities at work. They have more time for their families. All of, I mean, that's big. I mean, that's a never quit story of just finding some meaning right there, just by adding a little bit of physical fitness to you and a healthy future. All right, let's see. Couple more questions. Hey, what's up, Stu? I bought one of your books years ago. Appreciate your hard work. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. What'd you tell yourself mentally when you go through those bad days at Buds? Whew. You know what? You have bad days and it sucks. But your squad mates are there, your teammates are there, and your family. You can talk to them on the phone and say, "Yeah, I kind of screwed up today," and just kind of let it go and let it kind of roll off your back, not affect you too much. Start practicing and thinking positively about, okay, this is what I screwed up. It was because of procedures, and I need to learn these procedures better. Um, whatever it was. You broke a rule and you got busted for it. Now you got to pay the price. Sometimes that happens too. Just man up, man up. Don't lie about it. Take the beating. That's what you have to do. Um, A Crazy says, "Hey Stu, how many miles a week should I be running before heading into Buds?" I've written many articles about that, talked about it a lot on these live Q&As. In fact, there's an article running miles per week before Buds Stu Smith. Let's see what the Google machine puts out. How many miles? Here's the article title. It's called "How Many Miles Per Week Should You Run Before Buds and Other Spec Ops Programs?" So, yeah, whole article on that topic. I'm going to put the link down here in the section over here for Instagram, and then you guys over here on Facebook and YouTube, I'll put it over here. It's my opinion, but just a quick answer is anywhere between, I don't know, 25 and 40. And you'll see where I make that difference. It depends on the athlete often. Um, Somebody said, "Sorry, I just joined. How would I go about getting that program?" I'm not sure what you're talking about. What program? This program? The Never Quit Mindset book? It's just a book. Not sure what program you're talking about, my friend. Be more specific. Let's see. Looks like I've answered all the questions over here on Instagram. Oh, here you go. I tried to dive and I did a trial dive and loved it. I think I would love a career in SF, but also have the option of going military aviation. How do I make a tough decision? Oh man, that's a tough one. Well, here's the deal. You could do both. And listen to me how you do both. I joined the Navy to become a pilot. I did. I wanted to go to Naval Academy, become a pilot afterwards, fly jets, do that. I changed my mind. I was considering somewhere between pilots, and then it was Marine Corps pilots, then it was Marine Corps, then it was SEALs. Kind of bounced around and evolved along each semester to where I was finally dead set on doing something completely different than what I thought I was going to do. But one of my classmates, when I was going through Buds, he was enlisted. He enlisted with a college degree, and he did a SEAL job for 4 or 5 years. Um, did a platoon. I think he might have done a second platoon, and after that, he applied for OCS. And his plan was to come back and be a SEAL, but there was no SEAL OCS slots available, so he took an Air OCS slot and became an F-14 pilot and was doing really cool stuff, and actually retired as a captain. So you could do both. In fact, I've had some SEALs that have become pilots, and they flew jets at or planes and helicopters um, later on for Dev Group. So that's another one. Let's see. How do I get more force for the egg beater, and how to get more air in my lungs for underwaters? Force is usually a mobility issue, a range of motion issue in your hips, knees, and ankles for the egg beater. So my advice is look up my article I wrote on treading might be a mobility issue. Enhance your range of motion. I'm going to put this link for you down here. Enhance your range of motion on your egg beater kick. Next thing you know, you're producing more power out of that kick, and you got to practice. I mean, every time you jump in a pool, you should be practicing 10 minutes of treading as your warm up or cool down, and do it as much with no hands as possible. You have to use your hands every now and then. That's okay. But um, practice. Check out that article. It's a good one. There's a couple stretches in there that will really help enhance your range of motion for a better egg beater or um, breaststroke kick, even. When it came to becoming a SEAL, what was your reason why? Um, you know what? Every SEAL I met, I was just very impressed with. I liked the pilots. I thought the pilots were cool too, but I thought they were almost too cool. And um, every SEAL, enlisted, and officer I met was just so professional. Um, they were a little less regimented than the Marines, which I also liked. Um, but I thought, what a worthy goal of challenging myself to be in that same room with those guys. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the same room with those guys and go through their same trials and challenges that they had to do. Um, and I wanted to serve in that capacity as much as I could, as best as I could. Now, I'll be honest with you. When I got there, I realized there is a level of commitment to being a great SEAL and a career SEAL of 20 plus years that I did not have. Um, I'm being completely honest. I did not have um, the commitment to stay in for 20 years, not only for myself, but just for family purposes. So that was probably the reason why I got out. But that was a hard decision too. Do you believe there's an ideal weight, a height ratio best for buds that isn't too heavy, where you're more prone to injury, or too light if you're more prone to injury? 5'11", 208 was a real good with real good PST numbers. I will be honest with you. I've always been at that 5'11 and a half, 6 feet range, and I was 195 to 205 at buds, and that was a good weight for me, to be honest. I went in at first phase at like 205 and graduated at 195. A better runner, a better swimmer, better obstacle course, just leaner. But I was glad I had that extra bulk in first phase, just one, to be warmer, and two, to just be a little more durable under the logs and boats. I think that helped. But yeah, I actually wrote an article on that. What's the height weight for buds recommended Stu Smith? That's all you got to type into the Google machine, and boom, it pops out. This is the best height and weight for Spec Ops selection and buds trading. I just did a little chart. Um, and what I really did there was I just took a buds class that I remember, talked to a couple other dudes in their buds classes and where they were, and created this little chart from anywhere from 5'5" to 6'6" or 6'4", and where you should be in that range. And they're just, you don't have to be at these ranges. These are just kind of like the bell curve of statistics that made a buds class. And if you think about it like a bell curve, you have a low end of very light people that are below 150, probably a little shorter as well, some skinny and tall and below 150. And then you have the other end of few people that are above 220, few of those guys. And then everybody's in the middle between that, I'd say 165, 185 range for the most part. And you got your people in the middle of that, on the outside of that, like the 195s, the 200s, but I would say most people were probably in the 185 range. But check it out. It's just more of an opinion. I think I have it right here in the comment section for you. Put it over here. A couple more questions and I need to go. Hey, Stu, I'm active duty, a bit older, prepping for SOAS. I can surpass strength standards, but I feel my running has plateaued in phase one plan. Should I stick to it or switch plans? I don't know. Maybe add more. Add some more goal pace stuff. If you feel like you need a zone 2 plan, try that. If you feel like maybe you need to mix in some brick workouts, so you're not adding too much running, but you're adding more cardio. In fact, I just wrote this article, bike run combinations. Okay, I see what happened. Check out this article. It's my latest article over on Stu Smith Fitness. Just click the articles link, and you'll see this Hickson protocol for VO2 max on running, and it's biking that does it. And it's incredible. I have done this one in the past along with 3 other bike run workouts. In fact, this is what I would do. Anytime you have a run, crank out a bike workout before you go running, and one of these 3 or 4 bike workouts. And let me tell you, your running will get better. I promise you. So check that out, Colin, and let me know what you think. In fact, I'll put the link right here in the comment section. I sent this one out as a newsletter too recently. If you guys haven't signed up for those newsletters, I send them out every week. New articles, new videos, things like that. How did you tackle fear of missing out or regret when deciding to go SF instead of military aviation? You know what? I didn't look back, be honest with you. Never looked back. I was focused on moving forward. All right, let's see what else we got. Am I mission capable right now? My opinion is you are 100% good to go. Not even close. Tactically, Not even close. Physically, I could probably hang for, depending on what it is, but um, yeah, I'm not going to be up front if they're running fast. That's for sure. What's the hardest part about buds for you, physically or mentally? Hmm. Hmm. I would say the physical, but it gets so hard physical that it becomes mental, if that makes any sense. Um, it gets so cold that it becomes mental. Yeah, it sucks being cold, but it's also mentally challenging when you're dealing with the cold. And every morning you have an opportunity to just sleep in and miss all the musters and quit, but you don't. Don't even think about it. All right, folks. I think I'm gonna call it quits. I do have a coupon code that is ending its time. I noticed that it was a Labor Day deadline. I am shutting it down this Labor Day. The Live 15 coupon code is going to be no more after midnight tomorrow. So save 15% on programs like this, online coaching, courses, all of that, um, until midnight on the 1st of September. So I will no longer advertise the Live 15 coupon code after tomorrow. So I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday. Even though it's Labor Day, I'm going to do a live Q&A and we will discuss a topic and take some questions. Not quite like the mental uh, never quit mindset podcast we're doing, but I do appreciate you coming on and watching. And don't miss out. Stu Smith Fitness, tons of articles over there. That great brick or bike run combo articles over there. I highly recommend that if you're trying to add in some cardio without adding in too much impact of running. And use the Live 15 coupon code, save money, save big money on coaching as well. All right, guys, I will see you later. You guys have a good one. And I'll be back Monday and Tuesday.